But yeah, I didn't want to, I always felt a burden to anyone and everyone, no matter what the scenario was. I felt that. So it just stopped me from ever really speaking out or saying what I really thought. And I actually thought, this is the kind of the terrible way the world, I guess, we were taught then. I just thought, oh, I'm a bit of a girl. Like at 10 years old, I can remember going, why am I crying about this? Why would I, why would I ever show that to someone? Because that's completely weak. That's the way I kind of rationalized it as a kid. And I would be reading, and like my mates would be, doing something less kind of in depth. And I would just go, I'd almost force myself out by going, this is weird. Like, you're too sensitive. That's the sort of talk I was telling myself, So, yeah.
Welcome back to Open Up with Lockie Samuel, to episode 121 with Terry Cornick, founder of Mr. Perfect. Brother, thank you for doing this.
No problem at all, mate. I've been a long-time follower of you from a distance, so I was delighted. I think I answered within a few minutes when you reached out. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you did. Can you give people, I know we're going to delve into it a little bit more, but can you give people a quick overview of what Mr. Perfect is and I guess what services you provide?
Definitely. So Mr. Perfect itself is a grassroots charity. Right now we essentially hold community barbecues across Australia in local parks for the betterment, I guess, to create communities for men to come together, and generally for the betterment of their mental health, and also to reduce isolation. Obviously, during this period, it's been a bit tricky because we haven't been able to hold these barbecues, but we've been very lucky that I think around 6 to 9 months ago, my guy, who's like my socials coach, I call him, or branding guy, he kicked me up the arse and said, you're not doing enough video content. You're not sort of telling the story in video. And I resisted, and I didn't want to build this kind of online persona, and that's part of my, I guess, my sort of struggle putting my face out there. And it worked out because we started to build this online community. So when COVID happened, we flipped fairly quickly and actually do online barbecues now on a Sunday, where a group of guys get together and chat, very casual, open. There's not, mental health obviously comes up as it does in our discussions, but generally it's a place for men just to be and not have any judgment, all forms of backgrounds. And yeah, it's been incredible. It's been running, the actual charity's been running about 4 years now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'll link, if you send me a link after this, I'll just link to those calls or whatever group or Zoom or whatever that's a part of.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into childhood and go through your first story, could you please describe the way you view yourself as a man and or human?
Yeah, bloody hell, that's a good question. I would say I'm definitely a thoughtful person, man. I would say majority of the time, the world would definitely perceive me as calm, considered, thoughtful, all of those things. But I think in myself, I'm a lot more comfortable with it now, that I'm a lot kinder to myself, that I see myself as quite a strong person. Judging from some of the stuff I've been through over the years and kind of hiding a lot of my problems, it wasn't healthy, but it built up a lot of resilience in me, which now being a father has made me come to realize that there's a lot of different ways to be. There isn't just a couple of models of let's be the stoic hard man and let's be the more sensitive man. There's lots of flavors in between that. And essentially, I can't be the greatest man, or as the world perceives the greatest man to be all the time. But I try really bloody hard now, and I'm much more conscious of it. And I guess my effect as a man on others as well. So I think fatherhood it's definitely 5 years ago, around the time I also started Mr. Perfect. That's been a big change for me, and has made me think a lot more what it means to be a man. But for me, it's been strong, vulnerable, accountable as well, having some accountability to myself, Yeah, and I guess giving others permission to do the same to me. That's a big thing I've learned recently. That's truly what being a man is to me now.
Yes. Fuck's sakes, there's a lot in that.
I thought I was rambling, and I was like, oh,
no,
maybe I did
it all
say
makes
something
sense. That was awesome, bro. I got a couple of notes I'll probably ask you later, but
definitely.
Let's dive into childhood. Give us
Yep.
I guess an overview of us or a summary
Definitely.
of that. And I think you said your story starts there anyway, eh? So
yeah, look, so the whole Mr. Perfect story definitely starts very early on. So to give you a very brief kind of nutshell, encapsulated story, I grew up in the UK, North London, fairly what I would deem working class. I mean, we had everything we needed to have, right? But we certainly weren't affluent. My mum and dad split up very young. When I was very young, can kind of remember some early sort of, the greatest memories of that, and sort of conflict and tension and everything else. But I think I've learned not to essentially blame my, I guess, tense upbringing too much on the outcome now. Like, it's actually been the making of me in one sense. And on another, I'm very respectful about the way I talk about my family and the things they were going through at the time. So it was on the outside quite a loving family, and we had a big family on my mum's maternal side. But there were problems. There were things that were sort of had gone back way since my family were young. My mum was young, and things that have probably just been there for generations, be it mental health issues brought on by nature or nurture, as I say, both of those things. I sort of went through life with my head down until I was sort of a teenager, and just literally hid as much as I could, kept my head down, was effectively a mute, didn't say anything at school, but did quite well academically, ironically enough. I was very thoughtful. So although I couldn't verbalize it, in my head, I knew I could write from the age of 8. I could write to a really decent level and tell a story or explain what I was thinking or feeling, but no one ever asked me. So it was all up here. And I remember teachers saying, "Oh, like, you should speak out more and you should answer questions more." But I was petrified. I was, if I get something wrong or any attention was on me in class, I'd go bright red. I'd, have a bit of a panic attack. So that was the kind of way I grew up. I was very awkward, head down, hiding. Got to my teenage years and then discovered obviously girls and everything else. And I did have a bit of a knack. I look back now and I say, I'd never struggled with connecting with females, right? So my first girlfriend, I remember having a couple of beers when we first started going out, discovering drink, 15, 16. And although I was very shy, I managed to kind of, I guess, persuade this girl to go out with me. And it turns out that was my first understanding of sort of conflict in relationships and everything else. I really struggled with showing emotion, good or bad. So I couldn't understand, and I was never shown it how to do it appropriately and effectively. So when something was good, people didn't understand why I wasn't excited about it. When something was bad, they didn't understand my reaction to it or how I could, I internalized it a lot, and then it would just, boom, come out on the closest person to me. So only really the closest people to me knew I was a really emotional person, but just not overtly. Managed to get, as I said, get my head down at school, ended up going to uni, did writing there, which is kind of like my first love, I guess, passion. But stumbled my way through uni through really, I socialized okay, but again, drink hit a lot of it because we were going out a lot at uni, and it's always a theme that alcohol was never a good thing for me, but it was something that enabled me to be more social. So there was a couple of points really, I guess. The biggest point for me was when I got back from uni, the real discovery that I was having some sort of mental health challenges was, I was around sort of 21, 22, and I was at the time seeing a girl, and she said to me, "Oh, you've lost like the color in your eyes. Your eyes are normally really green." And and she said to me, "They just look really gray." And it was like this really insightful thing for a 21-year-old to say to me. And I just broke down, like I'd completely broke down. I was crying. I was in a state. And that kind of series of time was a bit of a blur for me, the sort of 21 period. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I was experiencing a lot of PTSD from things that were coming up as a kid. and things that I just pushed right to the back, I'd forgotten about completely somehow, and then they just hit me in the face. So another guy, I was around the same time, I'm walking down the street at lunch from my work break at work, and a mate stopped me and said, "You look like the world is on your shoulders." He, was literally like head down, was feeling just terrible. Didn't know how to address that. Didn't want to go to a GP. Didn't want to do any of that. My work wasn't the most supportive place at the time. So I did what every, I guess, a lot of men would do. I escaped. I had the chance to go traveling to Australia, and I thought I'll go to the other side of the world and it will work out. And look, it kind of did in the end. But I guess the story of my childhood was one of, I didn't know how to express anything, and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. So I did my best just to hide away, I guess, is the summary of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. If you were this kid who like had everything up here, who could write and tell a story, who teachers were telling to speak up, and then when you had the chance to be seen, like being picked out in front of class, you're having panic attacks. Did you know what your place was when you were a kid?
No. The simple answer, I don't think it's become a theme of my whole life, I think, actually. I was very good. I was very thoughtful. I'd say I was fairly intelligent, that I was good at creating and building up to something. And then when it came to the point of committing or doing the thing that would make me visible or the work, I cut it off and I went back to the start again. And that's the thing that I can bring back now, like being insightful about it at 36. I've done that constantly and constantly and constantly. And I still do it now in times. I'm better at it now. But I had no comfortable nature of like, I didn't want everyone to see me, if you see what I mean. Like it was, yeah.
Does that have anything to do with like the tension with your parents and not wanting to be a burden?
Absolutely. Burdens, like hitting it on the head. They were going through their own troubles, both of them. My dad was alcoholic. He passed away in 2013. He'd suffered, addiction problems. And my mum definitely wasn't a drinker of any sorts, but they got married very young, did what they did back then. Was obviously suffering her own things, had my dad things to deal with, had single parent, 3 kids. I look back at it now and I have so much sort of empathy for it, but obviously that caused a lot of things building up in me over the years that I've only really dealt with, I guess, recently. But yeah, I always felt a burden to anyone and everyone, like, no matter what the scenario was, I felt that. So it just stopped me from ever really speaking out or saying what I really thought. And I actually thought, this is the kind of the terrible way the world, I guess, we were taught then. I just thought, I'm a bit of a girl. Like at 10 years old, I can remember going, why am I crying about this? Why would I, why would I ever show that to someone? Because that's completely weak. That's the way I kind of rationalized it as a kid. And I would be reading and like my mates would be, doing something less kind of in depth. And I would just go, I'd almost force myself out by going, this is weird. Like, you're too sensitive. That's the sort of talk I was telling myself, So, yeah.
Wow, man. That's powerful.
Yeah.
I guess that leads well into the next question, which is like at 21, your partner at the time tells you your eyes are grey, break down. For most guys, crying in front of their partner is something they'd never, ever want to do. How did you give yourself permission to cry?
Do you know what?
In front of your partner?
I'd only ever done it literally in front of my first girlfriend, like serious girlfriend, and this particular girl was probably like my second serious relationship, and I couldn't stop it. I wish I could. If I look back now, like, it didn't help me, and she might have thought, I feel, some sort of empathy with him right now, but she dumped me soon after, so it obviously wasn't a great thing to do at that time, and she had no idea how to deal with it, as if she would. I don't think I I honestly, it got to that point where I bottled up so much, there was nothing keeping it on top. And in those moments where like she kind of gave me that implied permission, I guess, or like we were alone and it was just so intense, there was nowhere else to go. And it just came. It wasn't like, oh, it's just a bit of, and it didn't stop. And then afterwards, the feeling would be like I'd run a bloody marathon and my body was out of everything, like
Wow.
exhaustion, everything. So I didn't logically go, oh, she's going to think less of me for crying. It was just in those moments, it couldn't stop. So it was, and then it didn't happen often, but it would build up to that point. And then when it did, it would, be preceded by arguments with people, my family, those closest to me, not necessarily the people that had anything to do with my struggles, but that's what it was, just this constant crescendo or cycle of, building up and releasing, which wasn't healthy, of course, but yeah.
Damn. How did you work through, or was there any block or limiting belief that I guess you took on because of, I guess, allowing yourself or having this emotion finally come up and then being dumped?
Look, I guess what happened was, I didn't think about it too logically. It would either happen like that, or it would happen when after drink, right, alcohol, big night out, argument with someone, be it my girlfriend at the time or something, and it would go, it would blow up. And that was so not the perception people had of me as a person, as an emotional person. They were like, oh, he's quiet, he's kind of reserved, he's very cool and considered. And that wasn't what I felt inside. Like that was the complete opposite. So yeah, I don't really know how to answer that properly, but the only time I guess I truly got to a point where I knew it was a serious problem was not long after, I'd have been about 23, just pre coming to Australia, and I had an argument with my brother. My younger brother is 4 or 5 years younger, and I was shouting. I was like, just lost it with him, which was out of character for him, not helping my mum do something. It was like, move the washing machine out or do something. And I remember like it's out of body experience watching myself like lose it with him, not physically, but like verbally. And then my mum came in afterwards and tried to sort of say something to me. And I left the house and like ran down the end of the road, and I got to the end of the road and it was like a bus stop, and I'd sat in it, and all I could hear in my head, this is really weird, but like a train tracks, like the sound when it goes over it, and I couldn't get the noise out of my head, and it was just this like pressure cooker of explosion. So those things were happening, and I never truly dealt with them until I guess I was 30, when I was in Australia, and I was sort of about to have a family, get married, do all those things. Like it wasn't an overnight thing where I went, okay, now I'm going to address it. There was just a culmination of events in sort of 2013, 2014, which came together, I guess, to, force me to address it.
Well, that's a long time to suppress all that emotion and to, I guess, have that mask and that front of Mr. Stoic, Mr. Perfect, when in reality, like, you're this real emotional, expressive guy. Like,
amazing. Yeah, my GP said to me when I finally went to him at 30, and I said, he's all like, cheery, and I go in like building up for months just to see him, and I was an hour outside the GP's office in my car, like freaking out. And then I go in and he says, so how long have you felt like this then? Because I said, oh, I'm a bit down. And I just went, I don't remember like a time I didn't feel like this. And you could see him, like he sat back and was like, oh, like the whole demeanor changed. And it was like, oh, this is, and then we kind of set off a chain of events where I went to see a psychiatrist and did a few other things. And that was kind of like the, although it was a big moment for me to say it to a GP, it just felt the release of it was really good. It was done so the release was in a controlled way rather than the other way, which was losing it, and boom, not knowing how to, not having someone professional there to deal with it, I guess. So,
how does someone who isn't comfortable expressing emotion give themselves permission to go and see a GP and then following that go and see other health professionals? Because I can imagine that'd be a challenge.
I think at the time, so in between the 23 to sort of 30 was the time. It's a really weird stage of my life because I came to Australia. I'd never really been that bothered by money, status. I never was. That was not my thing at all. But I got to Australia and it was like hitting a reset button. And I started a new job in a company that was sort of starting to grow, and they expected nothing of me. And it was in healthcare recruitment, recruiting doctors, ironically. And for a year, I just got my head down and built this really successful thing. I was really thoughtful about it and helped them build. And then before I knew it, 3 years in, I was like 27 and earning. I literally looked at my paycheck one year and not really considered that I'd earned a real substantial amount of money, like more than I'd ever earned preceding that in all my career. And then I went, hold on a minute. I felt a little bit of a fraud. Like I was living this life. My wife still with now, like beautiful, unbelievable person, liked to travel, all these sort of things. We were going away. We were living in Mossman in Sydney, which is a beautiful spot on the water, like in an apartment. The work was going well, like I was wearing nice clothes and all these things. But I was, in a weird way, that the hiding helped me with work because it made me I get to work and I get my head down and I do it. And then, but every 3 months I would come through full circle and just have this cyclical boom, like breakdown. And then the next day, again, back to normal. So I'd never considered truly or confronted that I was going to talk about it. And it was only when I was sort of planning our wedding, 2013, and my dad passed away. I went back to the UK for literally like 4 days to see him before he passed. Came back, didn't tell my boss that he died, like went back to work, didn't tell anyone. And again, I was repressing, but that was the first trigger. And then it was, okay, you're getting married at the end of the year. We've got this big wedding. You're probably going to have a family. You're not enjoying your job right now and you're feeling a fraud, complete fraud. What are you going to do? And I think I just went, well, what's the worst that could happen if I go to the GP and just do it now? And it probably culminated. It happened. I booked the GP after like an argument with my wife or something that built up. And then I went, okay, let's do this. And once I started telling my kind of thing, I couldn't stop because I then went to the psychiatrist, and I was not educated on this. This is a different topic, right, for another podcast, but no one was educated, me even in healthcare, of what the pathway is, like what's expected of you from a psychologist, a psychiatrist, medication, none of it. Even my GP didn't tell me. So I go to the psychiatrist and I'm thinking he's going to like give me something to work with. Nothing for like the first 3 sessions. I'm like, I'm paying $300 to like sit here. And in one session, he asked one question and I just, boom, like went like bawling it. Everything came out. The next 2, 3, I just kind of told the story, everything pre-date. And I felt like a weight off my shoulders. That was a really good start. And I think in that environment, I felt like I could do it. And I couldn't even talk to my wife about it then when I got home. Like I told her bits, she'd ask me and goes, but if you're not comfortable, it's good. And then we didn't talk about it. Whereas now I'm sort of, since the Mr. Perfect's come on, I'm very open about it and I can talk about it. And I think I've seen people's reaction to me talking about it. And countless people that have said, I really wanted to articulate that, but you've done it in a way that made me think of this, or my friend or someone else. And I think that's why now it's been a gradual process, right? I've given myself permission over time to do it, but it's like training. The more you do it and the more you feel comfortable with it and the more you open up, it's like, what's the worst that can happen now? I've done it. The reaction wasn't that bad. It's actually been really positive. What was I worried about? Like when I'm being harsh on myself, like, why did I even worry about it? But, yeah.
Do you think that's what the suppression comes back to, is like having an assumption of how people are going to react?
A lot of it. And actually the kind of I'd say cynical, let's say pessimistic. I call myself some of these words, and my psychologist says that's a negative connotation to what you're saying. And I go, I know, but it's just my comfortable place. Like I'm actually quite a cynic about the world and things, ironically, even though I do something that's more of a uplifting social connection thing. I'm very thoughtful about it. And I say, I don't know how to articulate it. I guess I got to a point where suppressing it was really unhealthy, and I could feel it, and I could feel it physically. These are just patterns I'd learned from forever. If I reacted to something, I was told to be quiet. If I did this, I was told to. So those things just had built up over time. And then once it was out of the box, there's just no going back. Like I haven't seen the point since. I've seen the good of what this has done. And yeah, I don't know if I answered the question there, but I was probably rambling a bit. But yeah, it's just comfortable now. I don't know. And
yeah.
it used to be really unhealthy suppressing. I feel physically when I used to suppress stuff. I used to get the stomach pains, I used to get tight chest, I had insomnia, and no shit, like that's going to happen. That happened over the course of years, and I don't get that anymore. So yeah.
I think that's all it is when you have something on your heart that you need to express so that you can feel like you can finally take the mask off and be yourself. It's just breaking that ice with someone and them reacting in a way where they provide space and they provide support. Because when you feel this way, especially as a man, when you're supposed to be, or societal like expectation is stoic man, doesn't show feelings, cowboys don't cry, all that sort of shit. When you're feeling that way, you assume people are going to react that way to your expression. And so it is just breaking through the ice and finding out firsthand that, oh shit, not everyone feels that way.
Well, I think your question, again, I went off topic a bit, but the actual answer to that was, I realized that I didn't have anyone to do that with, right? So when I did it, or someone that could truly understand it. So my wife, like, just incredible person, supported me through everything. But she wasn't going to be my savior. She never was. Like, that's not. And I used to think, oh, well, what if I tell her, then maybe this will happen. And even like my psychologist says, like, you can't expect people to be that. Like, there comes a time where they're not, one, professionally trained, two, she's never experienced that herself. Like, just the most naturally positive person, or naturally like get shit done person, and only experienced a little bit of struggle when we had kids. Like, had a bit, and that was really scary to her. And I could empathize then because I knew a little bit about the anxiety, but I didn't have that. So when the thing opened and I did it, it made me feel good because other people came to me, not necessarily dumping all the shit on me, but they saw that I would at least listen, or they'd ask me a question. It kind of worked in reverse. They would ask me, I would tell them something, and I'd just release a bit of info, or maybe over the barbecue, Mr. Perfect Barbecue, I'm cooking and someone would ask me a question. And you could see their brain just like going away, and then they wouldn't say anything for 10 minutes. And they come back to me at the end of the barbecue or later on in the pub, whatever it might be. And they'd say, wow, that was really good, like you saying that. By the way, I myself, this. And they may not have told anyone that, family, parent, whatever. And then I went, okay, we're getting some progress, like baby steps, And that just made me feel good that they could at least tell me. They didn't have to dump it all on me, but they felt safe to do it,
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a real important point that you brought up with having a partner and not expecting them to be your savior. I know I went through that patch where, my partner wanted to know what I was going through, and so I would lump it on her like she was a health professional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then she'd completely shut off, and I'd be like, oh fuck, like am I fucked? Like, am I that bad that you have to shut off? And then I'd come back into my shell, and then there'd be tension there because it's like, I wanted you to be there for me, I needed your support, but you weren't there. And then she's just shut off because she doesn't know how to help me, and she feels like she's failing. So that's massive for anyone who's in a relationship who's going through something like that. Not expecting your partner to be that savior, and instead finding someone else who is equipped to deal with that, because not everyone is.
Well, I guess the journey of where I've come from now is funny. It makes me think, when you're saying that, of a text like my wife sent me probably 2.5 years ago, and I keep it on my phone, like it's one of the main things I've saved. You have all your old photos and stuff. I'm very anal about it, so I get rid of everything, and I only keep what I need. And then I keep this one text, and it said something like, I hope she doesn't mind me saying it, I haven't asked her permission. She said, because when our little boy, my first boy, is 4 now, he would have been 1.5 years, and it was a bit of a stressful time. I was like figuring out fatherhood and all this parenting crap and stresses, and I was trying to deal with my stuff as well. And I was starting to get on a better path. And I obviously was not in a good way that particular week. And she said to me, she texted me, I was on the bus on the way to work, and she said, we need like I need my husband right now, like your kid needs, so it's pretty emotional saying it, your kid needs his dad right now. Sorry.
That's right, bro.
And I've just kept it ever since, because it just made me go, it didn't make me feel angry or bad or like angry at her. It just, the weight of that hitting me was like, wow, yeah, like they need me as well. And I'm doing nothing right now to help myself. And I'm not a good person to be around. I'm not really showing up. Like I was there, and I'm always there as in person, like physically. I'm never away for work. I'm like always there, but I wasn't there as a dad or a husband. And that, man, like that hit me so hard. I was like, wow, as you can tell, I'm thinking about it now. I don't even have to read the text. But I keep that as a reminder to go, what's really important? If I don't look after myself first, and I'm not there, I'm not there as a dad and as a good husband or whatever good is. And I'm not looking after myself. She was saying it from a real good place. And it's funny how I think in a different headspace, I might have read it differently.
Yeah.
But it was like this slap, like literally like, in text saying, let's realize what's going on right here. Let's take some accountability. And although I don't preach that through my Mr. Perfect hat on too much, it's a very, the charity is a very safe space where people come, and no matter the level of mental crisis, well, I say we're pre-crisis, but whatever stage they're in, it's a very welcoming place. But we don't go beyond that mostly with people. We don't ask their background, why they got there, what are they doing? We don't preach at them, right? Whereas when I took it on personally, I went, yeah, I need to take some accountability. I was just like, wow, this is, something as simple as that at the right time kind of got me back on track. Don't get me wrong, I've had the moments where I've fallen off, but that's always a reminder now. So yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
God damn.
No, I did not expect that. Sorry.
You cried on a podcast. Woo!
Oh, God.
Okay, so how do you go from a kid who desperately wants to be unseen, who's so very uncomfortable with it that he has panic attacks, and then I guess going throughout life as that person, and then allowing yourself to get to a point where you say, hey, I want to start this charity. I want to start something where people can socialize. Like that's the total opposite.
I know. I call it like being seen. Sadistic. Well, there's a few choices, I guess, I've never been consciously aware of I made in life that were the opposite of that persona. So I always this is where the difference is now. I used to box myself into, you're an introvert, you hide, you don't do this, you don't step outside of that zone. Whereas I call it like the 10% with me, which is actually 10% of the time there's stuff I can do which is a bit outside the box, and I'm quite creative, and sometimes I just do stuff that will surprise myself, surprise others, that I haven't really thought. It's good and bad, but the good stuff normally when I've put everything into it and real instinct and just been myself and said what I really think, I don't worry now much as about what people would think about what I'm about to say, as long as I'm not offending anyone like directly or hurting them. I kind of realized the bigger impact I could make, instead of me standing up and delivering my work sales pitch, here's the slides about what we do. When I got up and just told my story and went, look, everyone thought I was doing good, I wasn't. And actually, I couldn't even stand here in front of you. I couldn't go for a coffee with someone. I couldn't look them in the eye. Like that was how sort of closed off I was. I think I realized once I opened up and told my story, the feedback I got was, shit, like that was really authentic, or I didn't know you had it in you, and I said, I don't know, like I don't feel that great. Like it doesn't feel unnatural for me to tell a story which is true. So the opposite was, I get panicky. I still get panicky now about like a work thing I'm delivering, but when it's telling my story, it's just is what it is. I'm not going to sex it up in a way that makes it sound better for anyone or worse or whatever. It just is what it is. So I think I now have gone, that's it. Like the cat's out of the bag. I say like a joke, come out of the closet. There's no going back. You Google my name, like in a future work environment. My work's not that corporate, but it kind of is sometimes. I've managed to kind of traverse right down to sort of all levels of any job. I now just say it how it is. And ironically, in my sort of corporate world or the jobs I do there, people ask me about Mr. Perfect first. So it's become this weird, they go, don't sell me this or don't tell me about that. I've seen this thing you do on LinkedIn. Tell me about that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is actually a good thing. I used to hide this stuff. And they're like, no, I want to know about that first. So then I tell that story and it's like, well, maybe we all just want people to be normal and like be themselves because it's much easier that way. There's no bullshit. You know? So now I've realized that I don't play on it. I just do it as I see it, you know, like I do it how I feel at that moment and I tell the story appropriately. To some people I tell more, to some people I tell less, depending on what they're ready to hear or what they might be. So now it's, as I said, it's all out the bag. There's nothing really to hide. So yeah, that's it.
Do you feel like you can be yourself now?
Yeah, there isn't, that's a really nice comforting thought now. Like when I reflect on it, truly reflect on it, I can now be, my wife says sometimes like I'm too, like the other way. So for example, my wife's family, they all eat dinner around the dinner table, like it's a very like full on thing. And when I first met them 12, 13 years ago, I was introduced to that and I went, oh, this is my worst nightmare. Like sitting here, having to have a view on something, being asked questions. I just ate my dinner in my room. And then there's a family that just share everything, like literally everything at the dinner table. And then now I'm like the one with the view on everything. And I'm the one that says what I think. And I'm the one that just says it in a respectful way. And that's me. That's the real me. That's like, I'm passionate about some stuff. And that's so good, like to know you can do that. And especially around people like I'm very lucky, like my in-laws and their family. They respect that. They might not agree, but we all have some very different, like we all have very different something, like to have your voice about something, which is refreshing. So I certainly feel now I can be myself in any environment, which is, yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible.
That's awesome, bro. Found your voice and comfortable being seen. I love that. Am I cutting out on your end?
A tiny bit.
Okay, cool.
I think we're good now.
Yep. All right. So one thing I want to ask you, especially having this, I guess, this gathering with Mr. Perfect and having this charity, how have you gone about making sure that you look after yourself and don't burn out trying to be the savior?
Yeah. That's something I probably only really thought about recently. So in my life, I've been very good at creating the distraction, like not to deal with, obviously, what I was truly thinking or feeling. So people ask me why did you start it? And I have the reasons why it came about, but really they're not all great, like noble reasons why I started it. They are because I felt I was better at helping others and that made me feel good. That's one reason. But so in a selfish kind of way, it felt good to kind of put the, what's the word? Yeah, take the distraction away from me. In another way, however, I did it because I felt guilt at the stuff that I had done, said in times of, like mental struggle, good and bad. Like there was a lot of guilt there. So I felt, well, by giving back and doing something like this, it's kind of like atoning some of that. Like that's why I feel, in a way, that's it's just an honest reason, really, as well. So I do care about my own health a lot more now. I'm still not great at it. I'm never going to be great at it. That's the whole persona of what Mr. Perfect is, right? We I try different things. I'm much more self-aware of when I need to just step out or like tap out of the situation. So I know that, for example, alcohol, like never had a problem with it, never was like addicted to it. But when I had it, it felt like it was a very short-term fix to feeling anxious, stressed, depressed, whatever it might be. So what I've done now is just very consciously stepped away a lot from it. Only drink now in the last sort of month or so. I've been really good with it and just said, unless I really need to have a drink or it's a celebration or something's happening, I'm going to make a conscious decision. I'm stepping away from that a lot. And I never put the two together like my dad's issues of mine. I never thought, oh, there's a link. But at the same time, I was like, if I need it, I don't feel like I need it to be me. So that's been a good thing for me. So I try and stick away from alcohol. Exercise used to be quite pre-kids, was very religious about it. Now, not so much, but I've got back to playing football again this year and training more, but I don't do anything of the sort that is considered like religious exercise. So for me, it's small stuff. All the people I chat to through Mr. Perfect, health professionals, everything, they're like to me, their constant message is keep it simple. If you walk around the block today just to get out of it, when you woke up, give yourself a bloody pat on the back. Like stop expecting to go from sitting on your couch to running a marathon. That is completely unattainable. You're going to end up injuring yourself. You're going to end up being disappointed. So it's like baby steps for me. So I now go, no, in the morning, drop the kids at kindy or whatever, and I'm just going to walk around the block a few times. It's very sort of green realm where I live. Come back, and I give myself a pat on the back for that. And I just do all those things. I try and stay away from too much media, anything that's kind of considered just, I don't want to call it mainstream. I don't particularly have a view on it, but I kind of stick with my little world, what's happening at that moment. And I try and stay as present as possible. I'm not amazing at it, but I read a lot. Podcasts are amazing. Like I think they're one of the greatest things ever for me. Like I can lose myself in them. And I learn so much passively without even realizing it. And I talk about it then when I'm speaking to someone. I'm very open-minded on what I listen to. So for me, all the stuff that I thought was going to be really complex, I've tried to bring it back to real simple stuff every day. Sleep, used to be a really early riser and get really good sleep. Kids change that, but at the same time, I literally have now in my diary, comes up on my phone, 10 o'clock, go to bed now, no excuses. Or get ready for bed now, no excuses. And it's just that. I don't do it maybe 6 nights out of 7. I then prepare for bed. But it's just real simple stuff like that. I'm very aware that I was always searching. My psychologist says I couldn't define what I thought happiness was or what I thought I was aiming for. So he's like, well, how can you judge then where you're at with it? And then I realized I've got everything I could ever have wanted right now, ever. So yeah, you want to have stuff to attain to, and you want to, but I couldn't. How could I match healthy wife, incredible partner? Yeah, we have our struggles like anyone does. I got a roof on my head. I live in a beautiful part of Sydney. We both have jobs. I have 2 very healthy boys. I have everything that should be important. So I have to remind myself that though. And my psychologist says, get off the train, because he knows I'll just get on this train. And in a half an hour's time, I've ended up way over here and I've gone, what am I doing? He goes, you can choose to get off the train. So I've even debated getting one of these, bands and putting GOTT on it and just look at it and go, get off. So I have to, it's real simple stuff. I just have to remind myself in the morning when I start to go off tangent, remind myself those things. And it's just acceptance now that this is me. I'm going to have to struggle sometimes. It will be a challenge. And daily, I just have to get on with it. The end goal is bigger than the stuff that's come out of it, is much more positive than the negative stuff. So yeah, it's day by day for me. And yeah, don't get me wrong, it's some real shit times, but the good stuff I've already achieved. So yeah.
It's a lot of awareness and a lot of gratitude, which is
Yeah.
beautiful to see. A lot of like self-celebration and being present in the moment and being grateful for what you have, which I think is lacking for the most part in a lot of
Mm.
people. So it's real nice to see that, especially like the position you're in. I guess moving on from there, man, what have you added to your life or removed from it to improve the quality of it, apart from like what we've touched on already?
So I think again, it's a theme that comes up all the time. Since kids, my life took a big shift, right? So you, the things that happened since I've had kids have meant my routines and the things that I thought were sort of really important now aren't actually that important. So it's being really kind to myself to know that I don't think I mentioned it yet, but I used to think, okay, between these hours, I have to be productive because that's how you're kind of like conditioned, right? And that's when I was earning lots of money and being the number one and Mr. Perfect. That's what I was doing. But when now I just go, if I'm not feeling, I've got that mental energy in the day at 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. And then by that point, anyway, I'm about to pick the kids up and do something. I'm not going to force myself into just doing something half-assed. So I'll give myself that space. And then at 8 p.m., once kids are down, we've had our dinner, everything's done, I get energy again. I've just gone with my natural flow of it. And I used to repress that and think, oh no, like now I go, no, go with it. So then at 8 p.m., I've got 2 hours of work I can put into Mr. Perfect, or my day job, or doing something productive, that's when I do it. So it's almost forced me to be a lot kinder to myself. So I think that's something I've implemented. I don't think about the world now as in 9 to 5. I kind of have to in my day job a bit, like I have to be there. But I'm aware that I can only be kinder to myself when I have the energy, I guess, and like maximize that energy. So even if I get 2 hours in that day where I'm really good, the rest of it, so be it. Like it's happened. That's something I've definitely implemented more to tell myself. Remove stuff again, media is one thing. Like I just don't follow much stuff like that anymore. I watch zero TV. Like I just don't watch TV. Like I love documentaries and stuff like that, and I watch them on like YouTube and occasional Netflix series I'll watch. But I've removed all that stuff and kind of naturally over time, just to allow me to do things more that I love. And then I've realized, again, on the theme of being productive, I've just said, whatever I'm doing right now, who cares if it's going to earn money, do this, do that, do that. If I'm enjoying it right in that moment and it's calming me and it's great, don't question it. Just do it. If it's something that someone else would find boring or whatever, I'm like, no. Like if it's watching a documentary on the history of New York, which I love, I go, it's fine. Like, why should you be doing something else someone else tells you to do?
I love that,
So
man.
yeah, like again, this goes over in my head a lot, right? This has been years of me telling myself this and then going, why am I doing this? And then I go, just let it be. Like in that moment, if you've managed to lose yourself a bit in that hour, that's your mindfulness. I used to get really uptight about it and I would deflect it elsewhere. So my psychologist would say, but you're saying your wife's watching Netflix. Do you understand that she's full on all day in her job? Those 2 hours to her to watch Netflix is her mindful, like that's her mindfulness. Just because yours is different, it doesn't mean. I was like, whoa, this is like told me this truth. And I was like, yeah, good point. So I think it's just being more accepting. I'm a lot better at that now, that's for sure.
Nice. What are you most grateful for right now?
Oh, definitely my kids. My kids and my family. It's just incredible. They're 2 and 4. Each day is just unbelievable watching them, the way they kind of develop, the way they talk to you, the way they play. They're just at a great age for, I get home or whatever, or, going to the lounge at 5 p.m. And it's just an hour with them of wrestling, reading, watching, doing whatever we do. The simple stuff with them is just incredible, and they're healthy, and I couldn't wish for anything more. I always say, like, someone was testing me, giving me boys, because like trying to work out, I do worry, like when I get my anxious mindset, my 4-year-old is like me, Whereas my 2-year-old's like more like my wife, and I worry about him a lot. Like I go, oh, but what if? And then my wife's like, Terry, like we love them, we provide them with a safe space. You have a lot more knowledge about this kind of thing now, and like if they come into trouble and do things, and I just go, yeah, like they're in a good safe space. So yeah, I'd say that I'm most grateful for them.
What's the biggest lesson you've taken away from fatherhood?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I'd say don't read blogs, books, and don't listen to other people that send you these things constantly. Like you are not going to be, you can prepare a little bit, you can prepare somewhat, but if you're so caught up in what you think is doing the right thing for your kids, just because someone else tells you it, I honestly, like I used to get a little bit hung up about that and panic that I wasn't doing the right thing. But really, when I look now, like keep it basic, like provide them with somewhere safe and warm and a space where they can just be themselves. And that is probably 90% of it. Like literally, make sure they're safe. Don't baby them too much, like to a point where, but give them space and love them. They're going to be all right. Like we overcomplicate this just so much. Like my mother-in-law says, we didn't have bloody social media and these things in these days and mummy blogger experts and all this stuff, and look at our kids, they turned out like they gloss over some of the other bits. But
yeah.
I do agree. I'm like back to basics. Like I just say like try not to listen too much externally. Really what's right for your kids. Like so.
Cool. So last question. If you had a chance to put a message on a billboard somewhere, thousands of people would see it every day, what would that message be?
Wow. It's an amazing question. I was going to say something really cheesy. I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, like be kind to yourself or something really cheesy and cliche. But truly, and the one quote I always come back to, and I don't think I've sort of mentioned it in a while in anything I've done, but there's a quote, someone else's, like Martin Luther King said, I think life's most, is something along the lines, I'm going to bastardize this, but life's most important and persistent question is, what are you doing for others? So I'd probably just cut that down to, what are you doing for others?
Nice.
Yeah. I go back to it when I get sort of in my own head and I'm being selfish or I just say, what are you doing for others?
Love it, man. To wrap up, where can people find, I guess, Mr. Perfect?
Yep.
If they want to be a part of it.
So best place, our website, Mr. Perfect, mrperfect.org.au. On there, you'll find the social links and everything as well.
Oh, cool.
We're pretty active on sort of Facebook's our main sort of domain, where we have like a private community group as well, which a lot of the stuff goes on and live streams. But your best hub is mrperfect.org.au.
Awesome. To wrap up, bro, thank you for taking time to do this. Thank you for going through everything you've been through, and then now giving yourself permission to be seen, to be heard, to let go of that feeling of being a burden, and to put yourself in a position to create and hold space for something like Mr. Perfect, which is providing that space for guys to just be themselves, man. Thank you.
No, thank you, mate. It's a reminder to doing stuff like this. I like interviewing other people and asking the questions, but when these sort of things it leaves me just buzzing after them, like absolutely buzzing, that people, that's the reaction we get. And I just, it's a no-brainer for me, but we're trying to provide that safe space for everyone. So I appreciate your time, mate.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Cheers.